Hello, and welcome to Marathon Swim Stories, where we connect with marathon swimmers around the world to find out how they got started, what makes them tick, and why they keep going. It's where we explore the human side of the superhuman feats of endurance swimmers, the connections that we have with each other, our support crew, and the waters we cross. If you've ever stood at the edge of a body of water and wondered what it would be like to swim to the other side, you're in good company. I'm Shannon Keegan, marathon swimmer, water relationship coach, and founder of Intrepid Water, where I virtually teach swimming freedom. Freedom to get started, shed the confines of the pool, or your preconceived notions of what's possible. Find out more at intrepidwater.com. On today's episode, I'm thrilled to share my coach colleague Melissa Donaldson's story. You may recognize Melissa's voice from the deep dive episode of my 22-hour swim in Lake George in 2022. Melissa discovered a love of swimming as an adult, and in just a short time, she's doubled her longest swim from around 10 kilometers to in excess of 20 kilometers across the Apalima Strait. In addition to digging into Melissa's remarkable story, we touch on the ways that swim mastery has revolutionized our approach to swimming, taking us from pain and struggle to having the confidence and courage to swim further than we ever thought possible. If you're looking for a prescriptive method to finding ease and efficiency in the water, check out Tracy Bauman and Emma Levy's new book that brings proper joint mechanics to the forefront so that swimmers can reduce their chance of injury and swim for the rest of their lives. Get a paperback or Kindle copy of The Swim Mastery Way on Amazon. Find out more at swimmastery.online. I hope you enjoy Melissa's story. I have the great pleasure today of being here with my friend and coach colleague, Melissa from Brisbane, Australia. Did I say that right? Brisbane? Is it Brisbane?
You did. That's
Everyone
perfect.
calls it Brizzy. That's it.
That's the Aussie way of calling it, Shannon.
One of these days. Tell us, Melissa, what's your story?
Oh, my story. I guess I'll start by saying, Shannon, that I've never been a swimmer. I'm 55 years old now and didn't involve or engage with swimming at all when I was young. I grew up in central Queensland, and I think my only memories of swimming was swimming in a muddy, dirty weir with my dad. Sometimes it was so muddy, I think I could walk on that weir. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth with swimming. And then I didn't really do anything with it until my daughter left. If I wind forward now, when I was about 49, my daughter left home and I decided it was time to do some self-care. And I thought about what I could do, and I couldn't run. I'm a hopeless runner. I didn't have a bike. And so swimming seemed like something I would give a go. And so I joined some squads and nearly died in the process because they work pretty hard in squads, I found out. And there are a lot of paddles and fins and toys that they used that didn't quite work for my body. And I started to feel some shoulder pain and decided that that's probably not the best way to learn to swim. So I thought I'd scan the internet and try and find out who taught older people how to swim. And that in itself, I don't know if you've ever tried doing that, Shannon, there wasn't a lot out there. And this is only going back about 5 years. But I happened to stumble across Swim Mastery. And they talked about this whole body swimming that they did, and they had a real focus on technique. And so I connected with the CEO, Tracy Bauman, and started to talk to her a little bit about my quest and what I was doing. By this stage, I was kind of dabbling with 1K, 2K in the ocean, not feeling particularly good about it, and knowing that I could do it better. I could do it with more ease. I could do it without feeling pain in my left shoulder each time I swam. And so the only way I could really, she was based in the UK, the only way I could really learn about this technique is to become a coach. And I didn't ever want to be a swim coach. But she convinced me that the best way to learn how to swim would be to enroll in the coach training, which I did, which was being offered remotely at that time. So I undertook the coach training and started to see some real differences in my stroke. I had a new level of awareness of where my body was in the water. I was starting to use, we call them cues in swim mastery, and I know you're familiar with this, Shannon, but these are like micro movements that you focus on when you're in the water. So I found that not only improved my technique, but it also calmed my mind because my other business was working in the corporate sector. So that was really busy, but each time I got in the pool, I felt a new sense of peace, a new level of awareness about how my body was reacting in the water. I started to feel where the water resisted me, where it was easy for me, and yeah, just really fell in love with this new way of swimming and the swim mastery technique.
I use the wording, the micro movements or micro adjustments. And I just think it's important for us to take a minute to talk about that because you can't get there if you're hurrying to the other side or if you're trying to beat the pace clock. So take us through this a little bit more, just getting into swim mastery technique, I think.
Yeah, it's a really great question. So the technique has this focus on, we call them cues, and as you say, they're like micro areas of focus. So a cue might be take your head as far away from your feet as you're swimming to the end of the pool. And so that's all I think about when I'm focusing on that cue. And normally in a swim set, I might have three cues and I'll do a series of shorter distance, longer distances, focusing only on one cue at a time. I now know the cues that help me kind of swim with more ease. And so I'm more inclined to use those. But I'm always trying new things and different things with these cues. So, yeah, the cues, I guess it's an area of focus when you're in the pool, and it makes such a difference to body position in the pool and the way that you move through the water. Works the same in open water. And there's certain cues that are even more powerful when the conditions are a little bit choppy or when there's swell or when there's current. So it's really fun to have. I have like a toolkit of cues now, and I can draw on these cues when I'm in the water. And maybe I use one cue between the shore and the first buoy that I might be swimming to in an open water event, and then another cue to the next buoy. And it just trains my attention and my focus and keeps my technique where I want it to be rather than it falling back to the patterns of old. And the patterns of old for me was when I was doing that squad work that didn't work so well. And so I get these reminders in my body when I'm not doing things the correct way.
I like how you say that reminders in the body because my body speaks to me too if I miss something. And how do you, just because I think swimmers with a swimming background kind of know about drills. And so they'll talk about like, they think of cues as maybe like drills. How do you distinguish between drills and cues?
Yeah. So for me, and again, I'm not an expert in this area, I'm only 5 years in. I've seen people in the water doing drills, and the drills that I've seen aren't always how your body, so they don't look as though you're swimming in the water when you're doing a drill. It's a practice or a technique that sometimes puts your body in a different kind of position. So for me, I'm curious about why people are doing these drills when that's not how the body works in the water. So there's something there that I've never explored, so I don't know about it. A cue is the difference for me between a drill and a cue is a micro movement that you would actually use in your swimming. It's not pretend, it's not moving your arms or your legs in a different way. It's how do I use this engine that I've got, which is my whole body, in a way that moves me through the water in the best possible way. And so all of the cues are designed around that and going forward. The drills that I've seen, they're not necessarily doing that. They're putting the body into some positions that may not be achieving the same outcome, rightly or wrongly.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that review. And that's actually making me think too that the cues they're not even like the micro refinements that we make to our body position, but the cues are where we take our brain that gets our body into this place that we want it to be. And it's been such an interesting. I am going to get back to your story, but this is it's so fun to have somebody here who gets who gets this and has been on a similar journey as me with regard to coming into swim mastery. It's been interesting to me to study more of the neuroscience and the brain biology, like what our brains really adapt to, and the outcomes that we can get by putting our brain in the right place. I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, but it's just been amazing to see the results, and in my swimmers too.
Absolutely. I think what we train for, we do, right? So these old ways that I was swimming when I was with the squad for that short period of time, the more I did that, the more I trained my neural pathways to swim like that. And I often refer to those times as my struggle swimming days. And now to have this technique where I'm actually training my body to be in the position that it needs to be in when I swim and doing it over and over and over again has been fascinating to watch how quickly the body can tune into a different way of swimming. And I mentioned that shoulder pain that I was getting. I have none of that now. It's not even there. It took a little while to go because my old patterns, the old ways, the old pathways were still there. But it seems the more that I do this, the more I tune into these things, the less those old ways come back. And I loved what you said before about this focus on speed and time. I used to be someone who would go watch the clock. How fast can I do this 50-meter lap? How little rest do I need? Do, to the point where when I got out of the pool, I actually think I was a worse swimmer than when I got in the pool.
Mm.
And I don't have that anymore because the other thing that, and I'm preaching to the converted here, that we do with swim mastery is we're also looking at a whole range of different variables. Yes, we work on the cues, but we also work on our strokes per length. We also then bring in tempo trainers and control kind of the tempo with our strokes per length. So there's all these variables that I'm still exploring and learning more about in terms of how it works. And so the physics is really fascinating to me as well, which is something else that swim mastery is really focused on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could go on and on and on about this, but I want to get back. You were in your struggle swimming phase, swimming 1 to 2 Ks in the ocean, not comfortably, I heard you say. So what
Yeah, not
happened once you
comfortably.
started on this swim mastery journey?
Yeah, so as I started to practice more, so I would spend time in the pool each week just practicing my technique. So I let go of my need to get in the pool and swim 2 kilometers without stopping and started doing series of 25s or 50 meters, just focusing on these cues. And I found that when I would go and do an ocean event, instead of being the person that was coming in the last third of the pack, I suddenly was in the top third of the pack. And then by fluke, and I think it's just fluke, then I would podium in third place. And I was like, wow, there's something that's changing here in my swimming. So I was then really curious to go, well, what happens if I do a little more distance? And I didn't even know that marathon swimming was really a thing until about 2 years ago. I'd done a 10-kilometer swim. It wasn't really a marathon swim in Fiji because we were kind of stopping all the time and stopping for 10 or 15 minutes. But I had the opportunity to go to Samoa and run some swim clinics. And about 9 weeks before we were due to go to Samoa, the organizer told me that some people who'd attempted a marathon swim, which is called the Apalima Strait in Samoa, were going to do it again. And if I wanted to join them, I could do that. So suddenly I was in this situation with 9 weeks to go where I could swim. I think the Apalima Strait is something like 22 kilometres. That was fairly daunting and exciting at the same time. And I remember speaking to my coach, Tracy Bauman, and asking her if she thought it was possible. And She said the foundations were pretty much in place because I had been practicing the technique, and she said it'll be a little bit of a stretch, but I think you can do it. But we need to start training right now. So with that, I kind of bit the bullet and decided that I would do the Upper Lima Strait in Samoa. And I don't know if you know where Samoa is, but it's kind of northeast of New Zealand, east of Australia, and what would it be, southwest of Hawaii, maybe? So it's kind of right in the middle of the South Pacific. I'd never been there before. And the Apalima Strait itself is between two of the largest islands. One's called Upolu and one's called Savaii. And that's where the swim would be. So I hadn't seen it, didn't know too much about it, but decided that I would give it a crack, because what else do you do? So then started the whole understanding what marathon swimming is about. And I know this is totally your world, but it wasn't my world. So I started reading, and that was probably not a good thing, because everything I read said you must train 9 to 12 months before a marathon swim. You must do 80% of the distance of the marathon swim before you swim it. You need to feed. And I couldn't get my head around feeding. I didn't even know feeding was a thing in marathon swimming until I decided to do this. So it's starting to like trial those and talk to people about it. And the other thing, I guess, about this swim was it's really warm water, so 29 degrees Celsius. And I don't know, in Fahrenheit, that probably converts to about
84.
just, yeah, 84, something like that. Yeah. So it was going to be pretty warm water, and people had warned me about that. So hydration was going to be super important.
What's kind of the first shift that you kind of go into with 9 weeks to go to a 22K swim?
Yeah, I get really committed and to my training. So 2 to 3 technique sessions a week without fail was my first commitment. And then I needed to do some distance work in the open water. So I think, and it was a fairly quick ramp up, right? Because we only had 9 weeks, and I needed to then come down from that ramping up. So I remember talking to Tracy, and I said, so 80% of 22 kilometres, I'm going to need to go and swim 16, 17 kilometres. When should I do that? And this is what was really interesting to me about the way Tracy changed. She totally switched my mindset away from distance and to time. And she said to me, we're not going to talk about distance, and we're not going to talk about speed at which you swims. We're going to talk about time as in hours in the water. So all you need to do at some point in the lead up, and she programmed all of this for me, the most I want you to swim is 5 hours in the open water. And it's going to be on this weekend, and then you're going to back that up with a 4-hour swim. And so it was the technique training during the week, so maybe 50 minutes to an hour, 2 to 3 times a week, and then starting to get into the open water, 1 hour, then a 2 hour, then a 2 hour and a 3 hour, and then this 4 and 5 hour swim. And then that was it. It was back to the technique training and just some things to sustain in the open water, smaller distances. So I don't really have time to get too worried or nervous or stressed, because it happens so incredibly quickly. And then before I knew it, I was in Samoa, and it was the night before the swim.
How common do you think shoulder injury is in masters and college swimmers? It's a jaw-dropping statistic that you'll learn in the new Minimizing Risk of Shoulder Injury in Freestyle Swimmers course from Swim Mastery. This 60-minute online course is packed with useful information about why shoulder injury is so common in swimming, as well as practical tips to put into practice right away. Go to swimmastery.online and navigate to the shop in the resources menu, or email me, shannon@intrepidwater.com, and I'll send you a direct link so that you can start swimming pain-free today. I think it's interesting to shift that focus from a distance goal. And when you're just thinking about being in the water for that long, I feel like it can help you endure. Like it just, I don't know, maybe it's just the shifting of the focus. But I've been doing that for a long time, just for various other factors. But it's that was a nice thing too when I came over and started having Tracy help me, was that shift to like that time-based focused. And I like the backing up swims too. It's like a way to kind of swim tired, just as a way to know you can trust your body that next day.
Yeah, totally. And I remember, because I'd not had that experience before, I remember waking up the morning after the 5 hour swim, having to back up with a 4 hour swim and no pain. So that was the other thing. Even this little niggle in my left arm, it was not there. There was some muscle fatigue. But then, as you say, going, okay, I'm going to get back in the water and I'm going to swim 4 hours. And the thought of doing that was really daunting to me. And then I got in the water and it was okay. And the 4 hours felt like 2 hours now. And so much of this, and I think you'd said this, Shannon, and certainly Tracy drummed this into me, was how am I going to train my mind as much as I train my body for this? Because if I can do that, my body can follow suit. But if I can't train my mind, if I can't stay in the water, and I'm a person who gets bored really easily. So the thought of having my head down in the water for 5 hours, it messed with my head a little bit until it didn't, right?
Yeah, I we could I think spend a lot of time on that too, but I'm so curious what happened the night before you're in Samoa, you're getting ready for this big swim.
Yeah, just one other thing I'll say on this, and I think you were instrumental in this, Shannon. I remember you and I having a text exchange because you were the only person that I knew that had ever done a marathon swim. So for me, that it was amazing to have you there. And I think you said in that text, you're going on an adventure, Melissa. And in my head, I was right, that's right. This is an adventure. So very much that's where my mind was at, thanks to those words that you gave me. And even the crew in the morning, I was like, great, we're going on an adventure. And we got there and it was still dark and we jumped into the water and I kind of met the kayaks a little way out and off we went and into this water that I hadn't even crossed that channel before I did it. There was no recce swim. There wasn't a lot of briefing even for this. So it was very much me and the Apalima Strait when I headed off. And I remember the first thing that I saw were these beautiful reefs, like teeming with fish life. And I was like, if it's like this the whole way, that's going to be absolutely outstanding. And each time I'd swim over the reef, I could feel the current kind of moving my body. And in those moments, I knew I needed to come back to my cues. I was just going to use each cue as I moved across this strait. And then occasionally there'd be the odd log in the water, and the kayakers would tell me to move around the log. And then there'd be some weed, and I don't know what the weed was, but if it hit your hand, it actually would leave marks because it had spikes on it.
Oh wow.
All of these things that were happening that were unexpected, but they kept me incredibly present. And I remember swimming over the most beautiful deep blue water that I've ever seen. And I'd stop for my feed and I'd say to everyone, can you see how beautiful that water is? And they'd go, yeah, but I knew they couldn't. It was like I was in my own universe and they weren't there. And so I kept swimming, looking at this beautiful water. And then my most vivid memory there were these like shiny blue glittery things. And I don't know if you've read the book Phosphorescence by Julia Baird. If you haven't, Shannon, I'll send it over to you. It's a really beautiful book and it talks about bioluminescence and phosphorescence. And I thought these things were phosphorescence. They were shiny and beautiful and the most gorgeous things that I've ever seen. And I'd see them maybe every couple of kilometres and I'd be in awe and struck by the beauty of them. It turns out they weren't phosphorescence. They actually are called sea sapphires is the colloquial term for them, but just stunning. But what was really interesting about that, I learned each time I saw them, maybe 5 or 6 strokes after that, there would be smacks of jellyfish.
Oh no.
Yeah, so then my mind was, oh, here's the really beautiful things. Oops, now I'm going to swim into a smack of jellyfish, and they'd be stinging me on my nose and on my arms. And I'd stop, and Tracy, my coach, was there, fortunately, and she'd say, how bad was the sting? And I'd say, not too bad, because she had me doing some scaling with it and sort of thing. And she'd go, that's great. Put your head back down and keep swimming. We're going looking for dolphins. And so I'd keep swimming, and it was quite amazing. I don't know if you've had this experience, that when it's like a portal and you're entering another world, and people above the surface aren't aware of what's beneath and what's happening for you, and you're not kind of aware of what's happening above. And then we started to get some current and some waves. And I'm told, so much so, there was this ferry crossing the strait, and the swell was so big at some points that they couldn't see the ferry from the kayaks.
Oh my gosh.
But I wasn't really aware of it. I knew there was something happening in the water, but I wasn't aware of the extent. So you just keep swimming, right? Coming back to your cues, having your feeds, putting your head in the place that it needs to be in, not where it sometimes wants to go, and the stories that you want to tell yourself. And you feel a little bit of muscle fatigue, but that's okay, because that's normal on swims like this. But for me, I guess the most exhilarating and the most frightening part of this swim was towards the end, maybe about a kilometre before the end of the swim. Tracy said to me, we're going to go through some swell, and there's going to be some waves. It turns out these waves, I didn't know at the time, they didn't tell me, were 3 feet high, and they were crashing on a shallow reef.
Oh my God.
And I remember Tracy said to me, and there's going to be some waves, but that's great because you're a really good body surfer, because we do a lot of body surfing over here in the waves. And I went, really? And she said, yeah. And I said, so I'm going to be able to body surf for the last part of my swim through these waves, and it'll just carry me. And she said, yep, absolutely, that's what's going to happen. Little did I know that, like, it was quite a treacherous crossing that we were about to do, and no one really had experienced this. So my swim buddy, Kate, jumped in the water with me, and bless her for swimming it with me, because that was my greatest fear, swimming across shallow reef. And at kilometre kind of 23, that's not what I expected to be doing. And so we went into the waves, and the wave picked me up, and it crashed, and I crashed, and I saw the shallow coral. But I'd learned how to be like this starfish when you have shallow coral underneath you, because it was only about, I would say, about 30 centimetres below me. And I just let the water kind of carry me across this reef, and we got across the reef, and then it was a beautiful lagoon, and we kind of swam in, and that was the end of the race. And it was, yeah, I think I clocked about 25.2 kilometres, expecting to do 22, because we had quite a few detours around reefs and other things that were happening on the surface that I wasn't aware of. And to this day, like that memory of the water and the exhilaration of crossing that reef right at the end of the swim is something that will stay in my mind forever. So, yeah, thank you for asking about that. It's really nice to go back. It was a few months ago now for me, and just revisit what that felt like and what that gave me.
What was your, I guess, thoughts, reflections upon completing this feat? I mean, you said you weren't a runner and you didn't have a bike, so I don't take it endurance sports was in your DNA.
No, I actually thought marathon swimmers were a little bit weird. I probably shouldn't say that on your podcast.
We're curious, Melissa. I call us curious.
Yeah, well, you've certainly sparked my curiosity now. I'm very curious about, I love that world beneath kind of the surface of the water, way more than I thought I would. I love what it does for my mind. I love how my body feels in a medium like water. I love exploring the marine life and what's down there and things that people above the surface can't see. So, yeah, I think I'm more curious now than I've ever been, and I'm pretty astounded that a technique like swim mastery for a novice like me could allow me to swim that distance. I think the time was 8 hours 30 or something like that, and get out of the water and get up the next day and go swimming and be totally fine. So I'm really blown away by the swim mastery technique. In my wildest dreams, I didn't think I'd be able to do that. And I'm the sort of person that likes to test things. Like I remember saying to Tracy, if it's really this good, I should be able to, in 9 weeks, go and swim 22 kilometres in the Abilene Strait. And she'd say, it really is that good, Melissa. Let's give it a go. So it was really fun to kind of try this new way of swimming that is so different to what I'd seen and what I'd experienced as I was exploring swimming.
Yeah. And I love how you talked about, I think the thing that's been the most amazing to me, I've been marathon swimming for like 11, 12 years now, but I always would, after a swim, just go to this big lull and maybe not swim for months, probably, because I always knew I could do this big buildup again. But after every single swim last year, I got out of Loch Ness and I was like, okay, I got to do this. I'm going to do this. And I was excited to go work on these aspects of my stroke that weren't the way that, all of my swims were extremely successful, but I got out excited about just the micro refinements and then what's possible. So then the curiosity kicks in again.
Yeah.
I can swim 25 hours and come out excited to get back in the pool again. Yeah. I'm like, wow, this is amazing.
You infect me when you say it like that too, Shannon, because I don't know about you, but there were certain things that I worked on during that crossing over and over and over again. And I really felt like I got out of the water a better swimmer than I got when I got in. And some of those things I've been working on for quite a while in the pool, but the opportunity for hour upon hour just to practice and make it better and feel what it feels like and tweak it here and tweak it there. And I was pretty fortunate to have my coach right there beside me as well, kind of egging me on and telling me, maybe try this cue, Melissa, now, maybe try that cue, because I have a thing where my head tends, when I get tired, it wants to sit a little bit higher. So just to have someone going, okay, you're going to send your head now to see that island over there? That's where you're sending your head. So those cues and those reminders were oh so powerful, more powerful than I could have ever imagined they would be. And it's really been a catalyst now for me to do another swim. I never thought I'd say that. So there's a swim up in central Queensland around where I grew up, and it's an island. And so in July, I'll probably go and swim around that island because it's got some nostalgic value, but it's also a 20-kilometre swim. And I'd just love to go and do that and see what's possible for my next kind of 20-kilometre swim.
Yeah, that's so exciting. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Melissa.
Thank you, Shannon. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and being and having you there kind of as the person who's egged me along to do these wild and crazy things in the world of marathon swimming.
You make it sound like I'm taunting you and making you do them. I'm more excited.
You're inspiring me, Shannon. What's next for you?
We'll see.
Okay.
To be determined. Yeah, to be determined. Okay. Yeah, I've got some other things I'm working on this year that, kind of things I buried. Like maybe I should pool swim. I don't know. I think there's lots of opportunity, but I wouldn't put any distance out of the question. I'm actually thrilled to know I can swim for 25 hours and wondering, well, could I swim further? What if my something out of my mouth wasn't all salty or what? I don't know. Like there's so many options. So
absolutely. Yes. And you've joined the Jellyfish League now too with your jellyfish stings.
One little,
well
what
done.
kind of jellyfish were you that you could just keep swimming through them?
It's what you do, right? Yeah. These are little ones. So they lots of little stings and then they'd be gone for a kilometre and then they'd come back. They were just there to carry me safely to the other side. That's how I viewed it.
Keep you present, right?
Yeah, the sea sapphires and the jellyfish. They were with me all the way.
I love it. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thanks, Shannon. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you were inspired, by even just a moment of this story, please share it with a friend. You never know what might push someone out of their comfort zone so that they can find out what they're capable of. And please leave a review with your podcast provider. It truly helps others discover the raw and honest stories of these amazing endurance swimmers. Thanks for listening.